thanks so much for coming out. This is such an incredible, fantastic audience. And also just a moment of credit to John, because there are many AI conferences out there. I think MIT alone hosts hundreds of them. But part of what makes John's events unique, in my view, is he really takes on these next-gen issues. Sometimes that's technology, sometimes it's business models, sometimes it's the entrepreneurial spirit. And in the case of our panel, it's AI safety, which probably should be part of every single AI event that's held, but isn't. So let me start with 3 questions to the audience, and then I'd love to introduce our amazing panelists. So the first is, raise your hand, how many of you have concerns about AI safety today? Okay, that looks like about 20%. Jamie, you can
It's hard to see, I think more.
Okay, let's say we'll give you 25%. How many of you have concerns about AI safety in the future and going forward?
No, many more.
All right, I see
Is that going to be 35, 40?
Yeah,
I feel like that was like 50.
Yeah.
Good 50%.
All
Good
right.
for you.
Okay, we'll have the Nicole up counting and give you 50.
Yeah.
And then most importantly, how many people in this room, given how many of you are working in AI, are working in AI safety?
Oh,
I think it's like 4 plus our panel. So, I think that is its own really important metric, because there's no shortage of excitement, but also concerns. And a lot of which direction AI takes has to do with people in this room and people on the panel. So I'm going to ask people in the back to shut the door, just so we hear a little bit more of the panel and less of the audience, and less of the outside audience. And let me just introduce our amazing panel up front, because it's really, if there is a red carpet AI safety team, I think this is it. We start with Noelle Russell, who's the founder and CEO of the AI Leadership Institute. Everybody on the panel but Cam and I has written books and has book signings out in front. She's the author of a new book, Scaling Responsible AI, and has led teams at NPR, Microsoft, IBM, AWS, Amazon, Alexa, and we could keep on going. Jamie, who's to my right, he served in the U.S. National Security Council and in the State Department during the Clinton administration. He's the author of several best-selling books, 2 of which are out there, Superconvergence, which I love, and also Hacking Darwin, both of these award-winning. And I'm not quite sure what the connection is to AI safety. I'm looking for a good pun, but we have 2 marathoners on our panel, and maybe there's an AI safety marathon we need to run. But Jamie's unbelievable. I couldn't not read this. He's completed 60 marathons, 13 Ironman triathlons, and 40 ultra marathons. And he will have advice to those of you outside who need a little more advice. Cam, who is at the far end, Cam Carey is an expert in privacy, AI, and cross-border tech challenges. He is a visiting scholar at the MIT Media Lab and has taught classes at MIT and Georgia Tech, among others. He held the position of general counsel and acting secretary at the Commerce Department, which he tells me is where the bulk of U.S. data is hidden. So watch for that in the next moves coming up. And he was very instrumental in developing Obama White House consumer data privacy frameworks. At Brookings, he co-leads initiatives including the Forum for Cooperation on AI, fostering international collaboration on AI and governance. And last but not least, we have Albert Kahn, who I was lucky enough to hear at South by Southwest. He was the hippest AI safety speaker, so I'm bringing him straight to you.
There wasn't much competition, to be clear.
There were other speakers, not hip speakers. And he is the second marathoner on the panel, unless anyone else wants to raise their hands.
Former.
Okay, wow, okay. And just completed...
Did you dress like a princess? Because that's what I... No? Okay. Just saying.
He just completed the Jersey City Marathon 2 days ago.
What?
And
You okay?
he is the Surveillance Technology Oversight Project's founder. They've got a great acronym of STOP. He's a practitioner in residence at NYU Law School and a fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School Carr Center. He has more than 100 articles, I don't think written by AI, in the New York Times, Boston Globe, Guardian, Wired, State, Newsweek, and many other places. And his TED Talk, which I strongly recommend, has been viewed by more than 500,000 people, 540,000. So, to make AI interesting, we've got a number of questions for our panel, and anyone who wants to, please feel free to answer as we go down the line. So AI safety is such a huge topic. The first report has just come out on this, and it's over 180 pages. And of course, John's given us 19 minutes to tell you everything you need to know. So I'd love to just quickly go down the panel and try for a 90-second answer. What are the aspects of AI safety that most concern you today and going forward, and what brought you into this field?
Yeah, so I'll say two key things. When politics are going well, it's invisible because business rolls on, art, culture, everything rolls on, and you're not really paying attention to politics. But I'm the son of a refugee. I've lived in Cambodia. I spent a lot of time in Afghanistan. When politics goes bad, politics is the only story. So everything that we're talking about technology, AI, exists within the context of politics. And politics needs to go well to create a space for everything else. And that's largely on a national level, but internationally and globally, it also exists within the context of global governance. We're here talking about AI and AI safety. There are people who are just in other fields, climate, pandemics, nuclear proliferation. Everybody is having meetings about this, and everybody is saying, oh, our issue is so important. If we don't get it right, humanity is screwed. And they're all right. And so the question is there a common denominator of all of these questions that we'll need to get right to make global challenges more solvable for humanity? Because if we don't, we're going to be in these little silos, and everyone's going to get to the upper ends of this problem and say, oh, we can't solve this because we can't solve global problems. And so that's why we need to think about global governance integrated with everything that we do.
Fantastic. Jamie.
No.
Albert.
Yeah.
So I come to this from the exact opposite perspective, state and local. I focus on state and local legislation, on lobbying, and on suing local governments when they misuse these technologies. And the thing that keeps me up at night isn't the AGI that decades from now might, play out the script for a bad knockoff of the Terminator movies. It's the algorithms that already today are denying people access to housing, access to jobs, access to credit, that are putting them at risk of being falsely arrested because of how a biased algorithm misinterpreted who they were, and how our legal system compounded that technical error with legal injustice and systemic bias. And so with a lot of the technologies that I'm trying to push back against, where sometimes I'm suing companies or governments, sometimes I'm pushing for these standards, a lot of that work, it is a global fight for the future of how these technologies will impact our lives, but it's one that's being waged in parallel in all of these individual communities. And I think particularly here in the US, my focus isn't on regulation from Washington, it's all of the municipalities and state legislators that have this opportunity to put in meaningful civil rights safeguards and protections for AI.
And can you just give one example that will resonate with our audience of somebody who's had their life completely messed over?
I mean, let's look at, facial recognition. We've seen false arrests where people had a grainy image of them that was run through an algorithm that was poorly trained, and then you will see someone being charged with crimes that took place in a state where they've never been, held sometimes for weeks on charges that ultimately are dismissed, but it is life-altering to be dragged off, taken from your family, have your life upended and charged with an offense just because an algorithm got it wrong. And we also see the power of AI to scale injustice. Up in Michigan, there was this Project Midas, which used big data to try to find benefits fraud, because people always think there's so much fraud out there, even though it's oftentimes not as bad as they think. And what they ended up doing was implementing a system where thousands of people were charged with benefits frauds, not because of anything they did wrong, but because of how the system was put together incorrectly. And people were driven to bankruptcy. They were prosecuted. Some people even took their own life in desperation. It was that bleak. So when we are talking about the scales of getting it wrong with AI safety, this isn't about missing a box in some compliance checklist. This is truly a matter of people's livelihoods, people's liberty, and in some cases, sadly, even their lives.
No. Noelle.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm just so grateful to be here and in the room of people who said yes to safety. So thanks for being here. I always like to just start with my own personal journey into AI. I got involved 10 years ago. I got an email from Jeff Bezos. I was a cloud architect on Amazon Web Services, and he wanted to build something that had never been built before, and he wasn't asking people if they knew AI. He was asking them if they had the courage to fail. And I, of course, was like, yes, let me go for that. And I became an early member of the Amazon Alexa team. I was there 4 years, launched 4 language models the old-fashioned way, the hard way. Learned a lot of lessons in that time. Some of those, hopefully, we'll talk about today. But I went to Microsoft after that and helped launch what today is known as democratized AI. And in the spirit of that, I realized that the biggest thing, it's kind of like recycling. Like each one of us could recycle, but unless a company like Coke or Starbucks changes the way they do things, there's not a whole lot as an individual we can do. So I became very passionate about how do we take models and productize them at scale. So much so that when I got to Microsoft, I had 14 research models, eventually 17, and I became, you might wonder, why? Emotional tiger, maybe? Mm-hmm. Yes. But the reason I have it is because I came to call these little models baby tigers. Because everyone, when you get a new model, you're like, oh my gosh, it's so cute and fluffy and I love it and I can't wait to be on that team and it's going to be so fun. But no one is asking, hey, look at those paws. How big are you going to be? Or razor sharp teeth at birth. What are you going to eat? How much are you going to eat? Where are you going to live? And what happens when I don't want you anymore? 23andMe, we are selling DNA on the open market. Like, we want to make sure that, my biggest concern is that we don't realize that in the sea of baby tigers and excited enthusiasm we have about technology, that it might not grow up one day and hurt each other, hurt ourselves, hurt our children. But most importantly, that we actually have the ability to change that, to fix that. And that's why I'm really glad that you all are here. So thanks for joining us.
Super. Cam.
Yeah, thank you. I think when it comes to AI safety, a lot of people in this room can contribute to the solutions. I see the key needs for AI safety as being measurement tools, ways to look at outcomes, do what Noelle was talking about, and look at the tiger closely, and to keep doing that. In carpentry, the maxim is measure twice, cut once. When it comes to AI, it has to be measure, 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 and measure again. It's got to be a continuous process, from the building of the system to the deployment of the system, so that you are looking at the outcomes. You avoid the Midas problems. There's good work going on. I think NIST, for example, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, one of my former agencies at the Commerce Department, does terrific work on developing systems of measurement, and is doing that with AI, with the AI Safety Institute. That needs to scale up. And I think research, much as privacy and cybersecurity research, have spawned identification attacks, bounties, and the like. We need that ecosystem to develop with AI safety. I'm sort of with Albert on sort of the architecture here. I want to disagree a little bit with Jamie. The lightning talk that I gave a little bit earlier today was about global governance, and that we need to look at that as a network of networks, not sort of some comprehensive system with a body. Networks have resiliency, they have redundancy, and I think the example of states and locals and relying on researchers, standards development organizations, NGOs, along with different aggregations of governments is the way that we need to approach AI regulation and AI safety.
Perfect. Let me bring you back to the way that Juan started us off this morning, because I think for all of us who were at TED last week in Vancouver, as Juan said, 25% of the talks were about AI, but they strongly contradicted each other. And at the two extremes, we started the week with Yoshua Bengio, who I'm sure many of you know. He's kind of, if there's a god of AI safety, he wrote the report. And he basically said, look, we're moving way too quickly on AI. The people at the front have lots of concerns. We don't have safeguards. And he was one of the 8,000 scientists who said, we need to take a break and just stop. We ended the week with Sam Altman, who doesn't look like he's about to stop anytime soon. He said the growth rates for his company, OpenAI, are off the charts. He says AI is inevitable, and it's a race right now, and there's going to be one winner. So it's a U.S.-China race primarily, and he says we have to go quicker. And so my question to the panel is, how do you find ground between these two extremes? I mean, do you feel like it's about guardrails, it's about metrics, it's about governance? How would you state where we should go, Jamie?
Yeah, so some of us may think, oh, how great, we can pull the plug. There is no plug to pull. If we pull the plug here, things are going to race forward elsewhere. And the big challenge that we face is the mismatch between the speed of the technology and the applications and the speed of our societally and legally and regulatorily, and certainly when I say governance, I don't mean big institutions, although those could be a role. It's really, governance is what everybody does. So we need to scale up our systems for responsible development, accountability, norm generation, and that's really where the danger lies, because we are in the middle of a race. And you look at what happened. They had the first AI safety summit at Bletchley Park, and that led to the Seoul summit, and everything was about safety. And then we just had Paris, and Paris was where we essentially said, no, this is all about, with J.D. Vance, it's about racing forward as quickly as possible. And ironically, Paris was also where that whole thing of Rio and Kyoto on climate change, where we said, hey, we're not going to actually address climate change in a meaningful way collectively, so this is where it's every country and every group for themselves. So if we want to be serious about governance, we really need to think systemically now, but there's no plug to pull.
Great. Do others want to answer that? And then I'd like to go to one more question. Yeah.
All right. So for me, it's not a question of whether we pull the plug or race ahead. It's who bears the cost when AI gets it wrong. Now, look to the left of you. Look to the people sitting to the left of you. Look to the person sitting to the right of you. I promise you, one of you will get sued for the AI that you're working on. And a good number of you are going to face criminal probes, and not because of new laws that are getting passed, as important as I think they are. We've already seen people developing and deploying AI tools getting raided by federal law enforcement for violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. That was written in the 1890s. There are so many laws on the books today that people are charging forward into building these products, deploying them, thinking of breaking a few rules, breaking a few laws as the cost of doing business. But we're in a space where the consequences of the choices people are making can be life-altering. I got my start as a corporate antitrust attorney. I've been in the room when people were told that the federal government was going to pursue billions and billions of dollars in damages. And I've been in the room when people were told that they were going to face years in prison because of price fixing. And that's just one area of liability that these tools are getting into, and I promise you there are many more. So part of what we need to do is make sure that not just that we're coming up with new regulatory schemes and norms, but that we're actually having a systemic investment in implementing the laws that are already on the book. Because, as important as the handful of cases we've seen so far are, I think we're going to see a real scaling up of enforcement in this space.
So let me switch to another question. I'd love to hear, and let's start with Noelle and Cam. So what are the things you see that give you the biggest concern when you open the paper or go online each day? And what gives you hope?
Oh my goodness. Well, good. I'll start with concern. So I run a very large community. It's called I Love AI. I usually wear a shirt that says I Love AI. And it pre-frames the audience typically to have a good conversation. But what I've uncovered is that there are anywhere from 12 years old to 85-year-olds, farmers to metaphysicians, and they are all desperate to understand, like, what do you mean the world is changing, and how do I just keep my head above water? And in a world where I have experienced AI to generate massive affluence for organizations that I've implemented it for, and responsible AI has become like water in a wave. Like, it's not a checklist you sign off on. It's not, like you said, it's not this framework that you adopt. It's like the way you end up thinking, the way you are, the way you exist, the way you build software, the way you build companies. It will need to be responsible. And the way that we do that, luckily, is that companies have done this now. Microsoft just launched a responsible AI agent based on 10 years of us doing it manually. And now they've built a system trained on that data. The benefit of this, I think my biggest concern is that we will not bring everyone with us as we take this journey, that we will leave people behind, even if we can bring them with us as quickly as possible. But what I'm most hopeful about is that I've never seen a more eager audience. I've never seen a more eager society to want to learn, to change, and not to kill ourselves. Like, I think that's good. People are willing to have this conversation, to open up the dialogue. In a world where we've got politics and religion and, diabolically opposed oppositional perspectives, there is a growing community of people who actually want to build a world that serves everyone. And that, I've been doing this for a long time, 10 years now with the Amazon Alexa. That's new, and I'm very excited to see it.
Cam, what gives you hope?
Allison, my greatest concern, I said I wouldn't politicize the conversation, but I sort of end up where Jamie started out, is the politics. I was able to work with the first Trump administration on AI issues, and they talked about AI safety, rights, bias, responsible AI. But now you have J.D. Vance going to Paris and talking about hand-wringing on AI safety. You have the Doge Bros and really the whole administration, moving fast and breaking things. And that breaks things. It's breaking the international order. It is breaking the federal government. It is breaking laws. It may break AI safety.
Wow.
You want to say something hopeful, just for us people? Hoping?
Look, I think having others, having other centers of energy makes a difference. I mean, I think that the U.S. is in effect, abdicating leadership. And I think other countries, other aggregations of allies will take power. I think or not take power, but move the needle in the right direction. I think this also certainly opens the door to China, and I think the DeepSeek model is a great selling point for countries that need access to AI on an easily adaptable and cost-effective basis.
Yeah, and while we're still a democracy, our voices count.
So let me come back to this half of the panel with the 30 seconds we have left. What is one message, and I'm going to start with you, Albert, and then go to you, Jamie, you'd like this audience to take away on AI safety?
Stay local, stay vocal. You have tremendous power at the state and local level to affect change and pass legislation that can protect your communities and actually start to implement these things. You don't have to wait on Washington.
Well, and I guess just to add a little exclamation mark, one of the things Albert explained is that we tend to teach everybody about computer science, and then after they're all done and they've done their startup and their seed round, there's like, oh, AI safety. I think you explained it really needs to be core from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it just really seems like if your goal is to have your students go out and thrive and succeed and not end up in an federal indictment, you need to put this into the front of the curriculum and not leave it as an afterthought.
Yeah, teachers, developers, researchers, all have a role to play here.
So I'm going to give
As
Jamie the.
citizens and in those capacities.
Sorry, Kim. I'm going to give Jamie the last word because our clock says 0. But also just let you know that almost all of our speakers have book signings and books out there, and so they will come and answer any questions you have out there. But
Yeah, so
Jamie-
it's the same point. Weave values into everything. There's not technology, and then you apply values to the technology. Values need to be part of every point of the process. None of these technologies come with their own built-in value systems. Every technology can be used for good or for ill. It's up to us to infuse our best values into the technologies that we're creating.
Well, on that note, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.